Hello everyone, it is Jazz here. Today I am doing my October reading wrap-up. I ended up reading 6 books in the month of October. Most of them were pretty excellent. One was not so good, so that shall be fun to talk about. And let's just jump in to talking about these books. First book that I completed in October was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the first book in the Raven Cycle series. So this book is surprisingly hard to explain, which I think is why for the longest time I did not actually know what this series was about, even though it's really popular. Anyway, I'm going to give my best summary of this. This book starts out with a teenage girl named Blue. She comes from a family of psychics, if you will. Her mother is a psychic, and many of her mother's relatives or friends that also live in Blue's house are also clairvoyant or, have some similar ability. Blue does not have any sort of clairvoyant or psychic ability. She just boosts the powers of others. Once a year, there is a time when Blue and her mother or some other psychic go to this thing called the Corpse Road, and on this road during this night, the people that are not yet dead, that are just going to die within the year, basically walk that road, and the psychic there will collect the names, and Blue just kind of helps them have the ability to do that. And usually she doesn't see anything, but this particular year, she ends up seeing a teenage boy, and it turns out his name is Gansey. So Gansey is obviously still alive right now, and he is a very wealthy young man who goes to a prestigious sort of private school called Aglayanby. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. He has enlisted his friends Adam, Ronan, and Noah into a sort of quest, if you will, for a ancient Celtic king. And even though Blue has some reservations about boys that go to this private school, aka the Raven Boys, she still becomes involved in this quest. This book made me sad that I didn't read this series sooner. Granted, I did want to wait till all the books were out, but once all the books came out, I should have just picked up the book sooner. Yet again, I'm just going to do an ode to Maggie Stiefvater's fabulous writing style. Love the poeticalness, of course, of it. Love how poignant some of the sentences can be, and how though it is poetic and poignant, it is also very much to the point and really hits you with a zinger, and sometimes it hurts my heart, but I love it. I also like the structure of the story in terms of world building, and also just in terms of the way I can see that it's going to be structured. It's really different and sort of weird, and I love that so much because it makes everything just really different from most things that you end up reading. It makes it really unpredictable because of that. I will say that maybe this book might be geared more towards the people that are more versed in paranormal or urban fantasy of that type, because I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that you understand immediately without a lot of explanation, and you're going to enjoy it more if you're somebody like that. So just know that if you're not somebody that's read a lot of paranormal urban fantasy type of books, it might take you a little second to get what's going on in it. But as somebody that reads and watches TV shows and movies and documentary things like that all the time, I personally thought it was really cool the way the world building was put together. Now, let us talk about the fabulous characters, because I flipping love every single one of these characters in this book. They're so well put together. They're flawed, but they're also full of really cool strengths, and they all have wants and needs that you're really invested in. And I was just genuinely really invested in the characters and really endeared to them immediately, and I just think they were so well developed, and it made my heart happy because they give me the warm and fuzzies, and they also hurt me inside because a lot of them come from very painful backgrounds, and even if they don't, they want to be something more than they are, and that can hurt just as much sometimes. So I think that I really also got just really emotionally involved with their emotions, and it was beauty-mas. Needless to say, I highly enjoyed this book, and I'm so happy that I read it, and I gave this 5 stars. The next book I completed was Runaways Deluxe Volume 1. This collects issues 1 through 18 of the comic Runaways. And Runaways is, in its basic form, about a group of teenagers who discover that all of their parents are supervillains, and they end up going on the run because they want to turn their parents into the police, but it turns out their parents actually have, minions in the police force, so it's a little more difficult to do that than they planned, and then their parents are after them, so they're basically runaways. Before reading this bigger collection, I had read like a smaller collection of comics, which was, I bet, probably like 1 through 6 in terms of issues or something like that. Remembered highly enjoying it, so I definitely wanted to pick up this bigger volume when I saw it at the library, and I didn't end up enjoying this bigger volume so much because it is a wacky, fun, wild adventure. I just like how it really propels. Something is always happening. There's always an action moment, and I really like seeing all these different characters bounce off each other. They all have a strength or a trait that is really interesting and really strong, and it really comes through their character, and it really bounces off the other characters in an interesting way. It also is sort of an intriguing study on the relationship that these characters have with their parents and how they, feel sort of betrayed by it, but also it's like your parent, and I think that is a very interesting dichotomy that this explores. This is also, surprisingly, the more I got into it, a bit of a mystery, and that was a element that I really enjoyed about it, because you were like, what? Who's doing what here? It goes places that you never thought it would go, and it's always a surprise, and I really liked how unpredictable it was, and the fact that I couldn't guess what was going to happen, because I'm really good at guessing what's going to happen, and I thought that I would guess some things, but there was stuff in there that I did not ever think would happen, and it surprised me massively. There's probably like a few plot points in this that I could get nitpicky about, but they weren't things that I like hated, and I feel like even if they were there, like it was like a super comic booky trope, or like it was kind of like something out of left field, I still think it was well executed, so it didn't like mess up my reading experience. Overall though, it's a comic that I would super recommend, and I think it's super entertaining if you're in the mood for that. And I would give it maybe around a 4.75 stars. It's very close to a 5 stars kind of rating. And I completed volume 4 of Vampire Game by Joodle. At this point, it's really hard to summarize this without spoiling it, but it's in the same vein as my previous summaries of this reread of Vampire Game that I'm doing, which is that it's about a reincarnated vampire named Doozle who is trying to find the reincarnation of his ancient enemy, but instead often gets pulled into the crazy little life dramas and hijinks of a princess named Lady Ishtar. As with the previous 3 volumes, I just can't find it in my heart to ever be nitpicky about this manga. It's just a bunch of wacky fun, and I just love the characters so much that it doesn't matter what the story does, I just go with it. So even on a reread, I don't have like a lot of nitpick things to say, or a lot of like, things other than love for it for some reason. It's just that kind of read. It's just laid back, light vampire read. Now, I will say that this one's kind of fun because it, in the span of it, closes off one storyline and starts a new one, and that's really exciting because you know that you're up to go and see like some new characters and things. And also this one's fun because it does get more invested in the monster element of the world. There are a little bit more vampire scenes and some other monstery scenes in it, and it just really goes with the title, whereas the previous ones were like more like family drama and action of that kind. There were battles and things, but not as many vampire-y things. There were just, mostly it was like magic and things like that. Super excited to just like finish my reads up to volume 7 and maybe possibly finish this series, because I just really want to know what happens in the end to these characters. But yes, I'm on volume 4 of my reread, and I gave this one 5 stars, just like I've given the other ones, because like I said, I can't be nitpicky about it. I just love it. Next, I completed the book Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. This is a psychological thriller, if you will, about a woman named Dolores Claiborne, and she is in a bit of hot water. She is a suspect in the murder of her longtime employer and wealthy employer, Vera Donovan, and she has to go to this inquest basically so they can hear her side of the story and see if she needs to be arrested. And at this inquest, she ends up telling basically the bulk of her life story and her connection to Vera, and also, you know, other interesting things about her life. And, you know, it goes to an intriguing place. So even though I watched the movie of this book and kind of knew the basic plot points of this story, I still found like a lot of surprises, and I still felt like reading the book was for sure worthwhile, and it is for sure an amazing book, because even if you do know the plot points, there's a lot of the way it's described. There's a lot about the character of Dolores. There's, of course, some things that are a little different in it that really enrich your experience of the story, and I think that that is super intriguing and interesting. And so even if you have seen the film, definitely check out the book. If you haven't experienced the story at all, you should definitely check it out. It's a really kind of different Stephen King novel. I ended up listening to this in audiobook. I did this for a couple of reasons, mostly because I knew that it didn't have any chapters. So just know going into this, it doesn't have any chapters because it is literally just her talking straight through. And when you talk about stuff, you don't talk in chapters. And I think that is actually a really smart writing tool in terms of how this is put together for Stephen King to do, because it made sense for the character and the type of story that it is. It's in first person. She's telling her story. It makes sense that there's no chapters, but I personally am chapter obsessed, and I was a little concerned about that, and I knew that that will just go over for me better in audiobook, which for that reason it definitely did. But another reason that I didn't think about before starting this book, that it's kind of good to listen to this in audiobook, because it is sort of written to a certain extent a little bit in dialect, not heavily, but just a tiny bit, because she is from a specific part of Maine, and he really wanted to give you that feel of how she speaks and the way she talks and the type of person she is through the way she talks. That can kind of be different when you're reading it, because I did read it along sometimes while I was listening, and so it was kind of weird to look at words spelled in a different way and things like that when you're reading. It's worth to me getting the audiobook and listening to her like actually saying it, and then it kind of like keeps you like from thinking, oh, that's a weird way of saying things, because it totally comes out naturally when the reader reads it that way. The audiobook of Dolores Claiborne is probably on my favorite audiobooks list. It is so well done. The reader is brilliant. She totally feels like she's actually the Dolores character, but also there's these really cool, interesting, like small details about it that just made my heart happy, even though a lot of this book is sad. But you know what I mean. It was so good. It was making my heart happy in terms of like the attention to details. For example, if she gets like a drink of water, you actually hear them like doing a sound effect of them pouring her water and things like that. And there's also this really eerie music that happens during the eclipse. If you don't know, there's like an eclipse that happens in this book as an important part of the story. And in that element, it sort of crosses over with Stephen King's other book, Gerald's Game, which I haven't read yet. But basically, the two main characters of those two books are aware of each other sort of during the eclipse. And there's like this eerie music when it happens and when she talks about it in the book. So I just really appreciated the fact that they were trying to give you that sort of vibe of otherworldliness kind of going on with the music and stuff in that element. Also, it kind of made me intrigued to read Gerald's Game, although that is like one of the summaries of a book that like kind of freaks me out. Don't know why after all the Stephen King books that I've read, but yeah. Another thing that I really enjoy about this book is that it really takes a very realistic approach to the way certain things would be in the situations that Dolores finds herself in. It doesn't like shy away from the truth of those experiences, which a writer really could. Not that Stephen would, but some writers might kind of shy away from like the gritty sort of details of what certain things are really like. And this doesn't, and it really gives it a really strong impression, and I really appreciated that. I will say that I didn't think that I was going to find this book unsettling, because it's not one of his, like, I guess, scarier novels. It's more of, like I said, a psychological thriller, but I don't know. It definitely pulled out the, not scary, but, you know, unsettling card in places. And again, another one that I highly enjoyed, also gave this one 5 stars. I seriously thought this was going to be a 4-star, and I was pleasantly surprised. So, yay, Dolores Claiborne, I will reread you someday. Let's talk about Eye Ripper by Stephen Hunter. So this is a book centered around the Jack the Ripper cases. It is taking place from the perspective of a man going under the moniker of Jeb, who was a reporter at the time of the Ripper cases and basically kind of gained a following through writing about those cases, and throughout the story, I suppose, kind of becomes invested in trying to figure out who Jack the Ripper is. Now, this book sounds exciting, but it's not as exciting as it sounds, and it really wasn't that great of a book for me personally. Now, I would say that it's probably not the worst book that I've read. I've definitely read worse books. I've also read books that I probably hate more than this book. And I didn't hate this, I just didn't like it at all. And it has a lot of problems to me as a reader. When I started this book, I immediately knew that I shouldn't have high expectations for it, because the writing style was obviously not for me. I'm not a big fan of Stephen Hunter's writing. He does that long sentence thing where you use long sentences over and over and over again in your structure that you all know that I kind of hate. He didn't bug me with it as much because I felt like he was sort of trying to emulate a style of a classic novel, but the fact that he was doing that kind of made it feel a little try-hardy to me. So that was a double-edged sword, if you will. It's like, oh yeah, you're trying to write in the style of a classic novel because these are like characters from the past. He also overwrites so much. He spends like forever on something that you literally could use one paragraph for, or even just one sentence for. I was like, you don't need all of this. He also repeats a heck a ton. Like, there'll be discussions with two characters, and I'll be like, you realize that you already discussed this just 5 seconds ago, and you're just reiterating what you said, like, not long ago. So it's got a lot of problems in terms of the writing style for me. I kind of see how somebody else might enjoy the writing style, but it's just not my cup of tea. So I knew when I started it not to have high hopes. I still thought it was okay to a certain extent. I do think the structure of it is pretty interesting. It is sort of, I guess, an epistolary novel, which is kind of hit or miss for me, but the way he did it could have been executed better, but it wasn't executed badly. And I did think the perspectives that he chose were really interesting. It's, first of all, Jeb's memoir, so you get those sections, and then you get Jack the Ripper's diaries, which are really graphic, by the way. If you are at all somebody that's squeamish, like, you might want to skip this book because it's very detailed in those sections. I didn't want to read it while I was eating by any means, but it didn't gross me out. But if you're somebody that's easily grossed out, you know, maybe not the book for you. But, you know, there's those Jack the Ripper diaries, and then there's also these letters from a woman of the night, if you will, during that time, writing to her mother and father, which they're like these letters that she like never sends. But you're kind of intrigued by, okay, like this might be a perspective of a woman that was on the streets during these times. So that structure of it had a lot of potential, and I thought that was interesting, and I kind of wanted to know what Stephen Hunter was going to do with it. Then I got to the middle, and I realized I could guess kind of everything, almost everything, that was going to either happen or who certain characters were that he was trying to kind of hide who they were. And that was like, oh man, like, I've predicted kind of some of the main points. Like, I knew who the character was that was Jack the Ripper, like, as soon as that character was introduced. And I kind of knew who the girl writing the letters was, because I'm very familiar with documentaries about the Jack the Ripper cases. So I think if you know anything about that, you're just going to be like, hey, I can kind of guess who that girl is. I may be kind of digressing, but also if you are somebody that watches documentaries about the Ripper cases or knows anything about them, I think this book might be a little tedious to you, because it kind of just feels like he's reiterating his research in places. And that was not my favorite thing either. Back to my thing on the predictability, even though I could predict things, I still wanted to see if I was right, because I know that I have the possibility of being wrong. I was right, but you know, I wanted to see. So I definitely wanted to just complete the book, and then I got to the end of the book, and then that's when I realized that this book was truly just not good. I don't think this is really a spoiler because there's no context to it, but I just didn't know it was possible to connect Jack the Ripper and Pygmalion. And when I say Pygmalion, I mean the play, not the myth, the play that My Fair Lady is based on. Which I've not read the play, but still, I've seen My Fair Lady and I can't get that out of my mind, and I just don't see how that and Jack the Ripper could be connected. But they did it, and it wasn't particularly well executed, and I thought that it was kind of weird. After that point, it got really kind of silly. The whole end was very silly to me, and it really just didn't leave me on a good note with the book. I did, however, listen to half of this book in audiobook, because at a certain point, I just wanted to get this book done, and I knew that I could speed up the reader on the audiobook. And the actual reader of the audiobook is pretty decent. So if you do want to check out the audiobook, it's, you know, at least well read, even if the book's not that great to me. But if you find that you are still intrigued by this book, you know, you can check it out in audiobook. If you're like me and like you're kind of hit and miss on books that are written in the form of documents, the audiobook is usually the way to go in those situations, because it just kind of helps to listen to the person telling their story for me. So, you know, that's a way you can go. I don't recommend this book though, because silly ending, predictable as heck, and I think the writing has a lot of problems. So I gave this book 2 stars. I might be willing to give it like 2.5 stars, considering it's not like a super horrible book, and I did, you know, want to know what would happen and like complete it. But I don't know, when I really think about it, it's to me, like, inside, I think it's a 2-star book. It wasn't good enough for me to round it up to 3 on Goodreads, so I'm just gonna say 2. We finally reached the final book of the month of October, and it was The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater, the second book in the Raven Cycle series. So we've gone in a full circle. We started with Raven Cycle and we've ended with it. All I can really say about this book is that it does center a lot around the character Ronan. He has some unexpected sort of skills, and it talks a lot about those skills, and also it just sort of delves more into certain aspects of certain characters that can now be delved into because of the first book, and I can't talk about them because I would spoil the book for you. All the stuff that I kind of said for the first book applies to this one, but more so. Like, the action scenes were even more crazy. There's even more emotional, like, development with the characters in it. There's a heck a ton of new world building elements and things like that, and also new, I guess, obstacles for all of the characters. It also hurts me so good because if you thought the characters were in emotional agony before, there's more for them. Every scene was so flipping poignant in this book, like, to the point, like, I read this probably slower than I needed to because I was like, I can't take it. Like, I can't take it, but I really want to know what happens, but, like, my heart can't take it. But, you know, I did eventually, of course, finish it because, you know, I would just prep myself and go, yes! I was that emotionally invested in the story and also in the action and the crazy stuff that was happening because it gets weirder, y'all. Like, the first one was kind of weird, but this one is weirder and I love it. This one, because it's kind of weirder, did take me a second to get used to, just because there is a lot about dreaming and just visions and certain things like that that were at initial value really hard for me to imagine, and some things I didn't know what they were. Like, I was like, I don't know what a puzzle box is, so I had to, like, go on the internet and look up what a puzzle box was, and I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. Things like that I couldn't, like, immediately grasp. But once I started to grasp those things, it was really worth, like, doing the extra effort to really reread things over and, like, really trying to imagine the certain elements, because it really does pay off in the end. Still really enjoyable even in those moments. I was just like, I think I need to do a little extra research, or, like, really reread that and make sure I'm understanding what she's trying to say with it. I mean, I knew I'd love it because I loved the first one, but I loved it immensely more than I thought I would love it. And like I said, every scene was just awesome, and I was like, oh, I see it in my mind and it's beautiful. It's flipping brilliant. I love it, and I also gave this one 5 stars. Weirdly, this book also makes a reference to Pygmalion, the myth this time, not the play, but it actually made sense, and also it wasn't the basis for the whole book. So yay for recovering the reference ball, Dream Thieves. Those were all my reads for the month of October. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing all these reviews, and please discuss with me your thoughts if you've read any of these books or are intrigued by any of these books in the comments. I'd really love to hear what you have to say. I think that's it for today, guys, and I will see you all soon. Thank you for watching, my fabulous peeps. Bye!